Well, hi. How you doing? Here's a second video. Thought I'd just go over the vehicle itself, because that is that is kind of the most important thing about it, is the vehicle you're actually making the base for it. Now this is a 1998 GMC 4000 heavy-duty box truck. It is a 5.5-ton truck, which is pretty big. The first week I drove this out to Indiana for Christmas and drove it on back. First week I came back, I actually got a pretty hefty ticket for parking this in a too close to a residential area. If you're going to have something this big, watch for signs that say no vehicle over a certain tonnage. But I wanted something that was big enough and strong enough that I could put a substantial living area inside. Now I'm just gonna talk numbers, just in case you're wondering exactly how much this cost. I might as well tell you. I saw this on Craigslist for $2,000. That was the cost. That was the listed cost of the truck. That is why I almost didn't go out to see it, because I was certain that if it was that cheap, there must be something horribly, horribly wrong with it. But also, at that price, I had to at least look at it. Now, another reason I almost didn't look at it was actually listed in the ad as diesel, which there are some pretty strict emissions laws on diesel trucks out here over a certain weight limit. So I did wind up sending an email anyway, just asking about, well, what is the vehicle weight? Because it's only over a certain weight that diesel becomes a problem. And also, like, if it is over that weight, does it have a modern diesel engine in it? Which would seem impossible for them trying to ask only $2,000 for it, but I just thought I'd ask anyway. And the guy sent a message back like, oh, I don't know why I did that. It's actually gas. I'm like, oh, well, can I look at it? Like, sure. So the next day I went over to see it, drove it around. I really liked it. It was exactly the right size, the right dimensions that I wanted as far as the box went. And the engine seemed really strong. Tires were practically new. The body itself it's got some rust, it's got some dings. And it did have a little bit of work that needed to be done. I was expecting to spend about $5,000 on the truck itself. So $2,000 would have really helped my budget out. So, but there were a few things. One of them it listed in the ad was it needed new catalytic converters. It's what cleans up your emissions and makes your emissions nicer. But so I wasn't sure how much the people that were there quoted me, like, they said it'd probably be about $750 to get that done. At least that was when they had a usual maintenance place they went to. They gave me their maintenance records for the last year or two. And when I called them, they gave me about the same quote. One of the first things I did was took it in and got the converters in, and an oil change cost about $800. So at that point, the truck cost about $2,800. Still pretty darn good. Another thing that needed work was the floor in the back, which that was when I looked in the back, it was this top layer of plywood that was pretty torn up and messed up because of years of rolling tons and tons of equipment all over it. And I looked underneath that plywood, seemed to just be this steel plate that was underneath it, and I thought that ran the entire length of it. I'm like, oh, I just tear up the first layer of plywood and I put a new layer down and there we go. No, it turns out it was not. The steel plate only went about 4 feet, just reinforcing the loading area. So the rest of it was just another layer of plywood that was underneath the first layer of plywood, which was not in very good shape. I'll check and see if I still have pictures of that. But this is after I'd already bought the truck, and I'm like, well, okay, what do I do here? So since the floor is kind of important, I actually called an actual place that handles commercial vehicles, does work on them, and asked how much, tried to find out like some kind of rough estimate for how much a new floor would be for them to put in. I sent them some pictures of it and the dimensions of the truck. He got back to me for $4,000. $4,000 to put in a new floor with this special wood he said I would need. Where I replied, well, it's a double layer of plywood. Could you just do that again? Maybe some really good plywood? And that seemed to offend him because he sent me a multi-page text message about how he doesn't Mickey Mouse jobs and it needs to do this and this and this. And I'm like, but I'm not going to use the truck for that, so I don't need it to do this, this, and this. I just need something I can walk across and hold things on. I'm not going to be constantly loading tons and tons of stuff into it. So I just sent back, thank you for your time. And I'm like, well, I guess I'll need to do it myself. I can't put $4,000 into it. I could technically have paid it, but I wouldn't have had much money left for the other stuff I wanted to do. So I looked around, tried to think about what to get. I mean, the wood is up off the ground, but it was technically exposed to the elements. At least underneath, there'll be water and stuff splashing up. So as the guy said, it would need to be waterproof wood. So after a little bit of poking around online, I eventually decided on this. These are 2x6 pressure-treated deck boards. Same kind of boards you'd use to build an outdoor deck, which is supposed to be sitting out there in the elements anyway, constantly being rained on and walked on all over the place. If you were actually going to use this as a box truck, probably wouldn't want to use these, because it's a fairly soft wood and you would tear the crap out of it running stuff over it all the time. But for what I was going to do, it seemed like it should be just fine. Now the actually getting the plywood out of there was a little bit annoying, because the bolts that were holding it on were pretty well stripped out. I got like one or two of them up with the screwdriver, but the rest were the rest of the heads are pretty much stripped out. So I eventually got a hammer and pry bar and just hammered my pry bar underneath here, and then just ripped all the wood off over the bolts, and then unscrewed all the bolts by hand with some vice grips. And there is also this bit over here. Oh, hold on. Oh, it's way back here. Over in the back. Hold on. Under here. Now you see that? That is still the old plywood on this side, because that's where that big old steel plate is. It runs. It's actually bolted on top of the plywood through the wood into the steel beams here. And there was no way I was going to move that. So I tried. There was no way to get that up, or at least not in any useful way. So what I eventually wound up doing is I just went to the edge of the steel plate and just sawed along that edge. I think you can. That's about the edge there. And I just took my skill saw and just sawed all along the edge and just replaced all the plywood that was in front of it with the boards, and just slapped a new piece of plywood over the plate. Because the wood here isn't so bad anyway. It's pretty much had the plate protecting it most of this time, holding it together. It's also underneath the lift gate here, which is something else I need to remove at some point because I don't need it for anything. I have thought about maybe building a patio with it. That'd be kind of neat, having a retractable patio, but I don't know. For right now, it's just still there. But yeah, that plate is not gonna that plate is gonna stay there for quite a while. So I don't foresee that being a problem in the future. So I just replaced like the first 12 feet of the floor with the deck boards. And yeah, that was about, with the cost of the wood and hardware that I used, it was about $300 for that. So when all was said and done, cost about $3,100 for the truck. Not bad. Not bad at all. Now also the entryway. One of the things I wanted was I didn't want to have to use the roll-up door all the time, because that would just be an awkward way to get in and out. And also I'd have to kind of screw around with me insulating it, because I'd have the railing going along everywhere. So what I wound up doing here is, there's a lot of glare on my screen, I'm not sure if, okay, there we go. See, the door is still here, but this part is not actually a door anymore. This doesn't actually, the little latch on there is just for show. The lock is just for show, I don't actually use it anymore. What I did was I cut this out of the door. I cut this little more normal shaped door out of that, then bolted this. I was going to use a deadbolt, but I'm having trouble finding a deadbolt that really, it's very thick, so I'm having trouble finding a deadbolt that'll really fit in there very well. I'd have to really shave down a lot of the wood, so I just bolted this cast iron handle on here and got this big ass length of chain, and there are these handles that are supposed to help you get back in the truck. So when I want to lock the thing, I just roll the chain between both the handles and lock this big ass padlock. But yeah, the actual rest of the door doesn't move anymore, but this part does. Hey bud, no, back. All right. He can't really get out on his own, or he'll fall like 3 feet. It's not a very good idea. Anyway, now the way the door is set up in here, I had to modify it a bit, of course. If you look up there where that big coil is, that was it still is the counterweight for the door. That was attached down at the bottom and helped you roll it up with little to no problem. I detached that, and just had the door itself is actually still technically on the rollers here. That's still the railing for it is still there. I took a reciprocating saw and a torch blade, carbonite torch blade, or it's supposed to like cut through metal and stuff, and I used it to chop through it right here. And just chop on there. There was a hole, and cut and ripped all the railing went all the way through here. So I took that off, which took an irritating amount of time because it was put on there very well. I had to like take a drill bit, and I was like screwing into the bolts that were holding it, because I could not remove them any other way. I'd keep screwing into them and screwing to like slowly whittling them away until I finally pulled them off. But anyway, so I just put the door down like that. Then I cut my little section out of that. I still need to like fully insulate this part. I have some foam board. This is the foam board that was actually my Tesla batteries came packed in. My battery bank came packed in, and there's enough that I can just fill up this area. And this part will eventually be where the air conditioner is, so I made sure to leave enough room for that. It's only like a 6-foot door that I just framed with 2x4s and the big thick wood that came with it. There's still the little hinges there. This is one of the more annoying bits, trying to fit this door properly, but it works all right. And I just got a little bolt latch up there for when I want to shut it inside. So yeah, so it's just this little like 2.5 by 6 foot door that I cut out of the main door. And then the rest of it is all just a solid wall now that will not move. Especially after I sprayed the spray foam. That was one of the nice bits about finding the truck so cheap, was I kind of expanded a little of my other ideas for it. Originally I had thought about like maybe some fiberglass insulation, but instead I went with spray foam. There's still that little bit in the corner I need to cover up. which gives me a much better R rating, and well, was quite a bit more expensive. It was like, I don't know, $1,300 for all this foam I used, which it's all right. It's all right. So yeah, those are the modifications I made to the truck body itself and my entryway. Next time I'll go into the electrical system that I have, which I will say is rather impressive, if I do say so myself. All right, well, see you later. Bye.